Hey, welcome to the Coach's Locker Podcast with Chris Fore. You are listening to episode 18. Hey, I'm really excited about this podcast. I am going to be talking through 5 ways to know it's time to leave. 5 reasons, 5 different ways you'll know it's time to leave your current position as a coach, or kind of applies to any job, actually, to be very honest with you. These 5 reasons will apply to any job. It's a question I get often. I'd say 10 to 15 times a month. I don't know. A lot from about now, right about this time of year, like just after the halfway season point to the end of the year. And then, into December, January, February, I'll get this question a lot. Hey, how do I know when it's time to leave? And so I thought it'd be a good podcast to address as your season is wrapping up and what have you. I am not interviewing Coach Butler today. It's his bye week, and so we're not going to catch up with Coach Butler. Kind of gave him this week off. But I am here with my son, my 11-year-old Nate. Tell my audience hello.
Hello.
Nate's a man of few words. I'm making him do this. No, but we're getting ready to watch a little Monday Night Football. Nate, tell us how you did in your football game on Saturday.
I feel like I did pretty good for our first one.
That's good. Yeah, it was our first game. Coaching Nate's flag football team. And, son, tell everybody, I'm very proud. What is the big play, your highlight of the game for you as an individual?
Probably I got an interception in the end of the half.
That's right. Nate got a big old interception. So that was awesome. And we lost the game, unfortunately. Tell them how that went down.
It went down to the last play, and then it was a trick play. The quarterback handed it off to the running back, and he tried to throw it back to the quarterback, who ran to the end zone, but he threw it too low, and it went for a pick 6.
Nate, did your dad call the perfect play for the perfect situation, or what?
Yes.
Thank you. Great answer, son. So, yeah, we called a little Philly special play there, but it didn't work, unfortunately. Fun game. Nathaniel, what are the 2 things I tell you before every time you play a game, take the field or court?
Have fun and play hard.
There you go. Except for you got them backwards. Play hard and have fun.
Yeah.
When did I start telling you that?
Like my 3rd year of basketball or something.
3rd year?
Or first, I don't know.
Yeah, 1st year. How old are you now?
11.
Did I already say that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now we've said it twice. So yeah, if you've got kids at home, man, make sure you're not that guy, right? That jerk dad, parent who's pushing their kids into things. I always tell my kids the same 2 things before all their games: play hard and have fun. Afterwards, that's, we're going to talk. Nate's had some tough losses where he didn't really want to talk too much, right? Mm-hmm. Can you think of any of those?
Probably my basketball championship when we should have won.
Yep, probably should have won that basketball championship last year, but they didn't. But I always tell them, think of those 2 things. That's how you should evaluate yourself. Did you have fun? Did you play hard?
Yes.
Those 2 things, right?
Yep.
Do you like that approach as a parent?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else do you like about your good old dad?
Even if
he had
I
to
win
think.
or
You
lose,
like that, folks?
If I win or I lose, it's okay, no matter what.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that'll change when you get to high school. I'm just kidding, folks. Anyway, hey, this episode, enjoy it. We're talking about 5 reasons, 5 ways to know it might be time to leave your current job. Check us out, 8laces.org. Check us out at footballcoachingpodcast.com. And I really appreciate you listening. Now, on to why we're here. 5 ways to know it's time to leave. You are listening to the Coach's Locker Podcast with Chris Fore, a place for all coaches to call home. The Coach's Locker Podcast is a part of the Football Coaching Podcast Network. Please visit footballcoachingpodcast.com to hear and see our entire lineup of top football coaches coming to you every single podcast with valuable information to help you and your program. The Coach's Locker Podcast with Chris Fore exists to help prepare coaches to be hired for the job of their dreams and to provide coaches with dynamite resources to become even more successful in their field. You can reach me on Twitter at Coach Fore That's at COACHFORE. And my podcast home is at 8laces.org/podcast. That's 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast. Welcome to the Coach's Locker Podcast with Chris Fore. Now, let's get after it. Hands up, forget about the past, 'cause you and I's everything I ever asked for. Top down round the West Coast. All right, let's get right into this, coaches. So, as you heard on the intro, we're going to be talking today about 5 ways that you know it's time to go. I get this question a lot, whether you follow me on Twitter and my website and stuff or not. If you don't, give me a follow at Coach Fore, at COACHFORE. My website is 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org. But what I do is I help coaches navigate the whole job search process. And part of that job search process, obviously, is, kind of knowing, hey, when's it time to move on? When should I look for a new gig? And so I get this question often. I would say, from about starting now, early October until maybe March, I will get 2 or 3 a week, 20 a month, asking this type of question. So I thought it'd be a great one to attack here on the podcast. I know some of you are winding down your seasons. Maybe you have 4 games left, or wherever you are. I know some are starting to ask that. I've been in situations after one game, you're like, maybe I made the wrong choice, or maybe I made the wrong move, the wrong decision to come here. Whatever your case is, let's talk today about 5 ways to know it's time to move on. 5 indications maybe. And in my life, these are some that I've dealt with over time. I coached 16 years at the high school level, 1 at the junior college level. And I'm kind of one of those guys who I love to build things. I love to, go help make things better at a place. I also love to help things keep going, on the right track, and what can we do to help us get over the edge type of deal. So I've never been in one place, at one school more than 5 years, and I'm not sure exactly why, because I grew up in a small community down in the San Diego area where my whole dream was to never leave that town, and I've still got, part of that dream in me to go to one place forever, where you're teaching and coaching your players' grandkids or whatever. That's not going to happen for me. But anyway, I have been to, Fallbrook, Linfield Christian, Capistrano Valley Christian, Excelsior Charter, Oak Hills, and Sultana as a coach, and then Victor Valley College last season. That's since 1993 when I first started coaching. Took a little time off during college, and I did not coach. But, so I've been in, a couple of those places 5 years. Oak Hills, I was real happy there. I was hoping to stay there for a while, but unfortunately my position got eliminated, my teaching position. And there were 2 special ed teachers who our positions were cut. And so I had a choice of any other school in the district that had a special ed opening. So that was one of those kind of a bummer scenarios that I had to make a choice and leave. I got to go over and coach with a friend of mine, though, Keith Locklear at Sultana. And I had a great time at Sultana for 4 years. But having said that, it's, that was one of those moves kind of out of my hands. So, but anyhow, let's jump into it here. Number 1, you're bored. That's how you kind of know it's a good time to go. Now, boredom might come up from a variety of different ways. One of those ways that boredom might happen is because the guy you're working for, the head coach you're working for, or maybe you are a head coach at a school, it's just not progressing
or you're not able to use the talents and abilities that you have. This is kind of, again, telling my own story. I spent 9 years in the classroom, but I realized after 3 years, I didn't want to be in the classroom my entire career. And so I got bored in the classroom. Love working with kids, love teaching things, but to teach the same thing, 4 times in a row, and then it's like, oh, now I got to come back and do this all again next year. Some guys love that. They don't have to work very hard at putting together lessons or what have you. They just, you can open up that file and it's all there the next year. And then some guys work very hard at their lessons. I get that. But I just got bored. I got bored in the classroom. And so, and then that's why I just recently made a move. After 5 years teaching, 01 to 06, I left to become an athletic director at a school. It was a private school. And then, fast forward, I spent the last 4 years teaching, again, in the public sector. I had to go get a public credential, kind of as an ends to a means to an end, and that end was getting an admin credential to become a public school administrator. And then that's now what I'm doing now as an assistant principal. But the last 4 years, I did, I think, a great job in the classroom. I just get bored in the classroom. I don't feel like I'm using all the abilities, gifts, abilities, talents, what have you, however you want to call those things. What I really am passionate about doing, I just don't get that in the classroom. So that might be the case for you, in the football program, softball program, whatever you're coaching. Maybe you're just not being challenged where you are anymore. And then that leads to boredom. That's what I've found. If you're not challenged, it leads to boredom. Or, there's a variety of other reasons a coach might get bored. Level of competition, maybe that's not stimulating to you anymore. Maybe the program you're working in, the football program or what have you, it's just not stimulating you personally. Maybe you've been there 10 or 12 years. Maybe you've kind of done everything you could do there, and so you're bored and you're kind of wondering, well, maybe it's time to go on. You're going through the motions, but you're just not really having fun anymore. I think that's all kind of part of that boredom thing. Maybe you feel like you're not really making a difference in any facet of being a coach, and so it might be time to go if you're bored. If you're feeling like, I'm just not feeling it really here anymore. Again, this has nothing to do with the people you work for, nothing to do with the kids you're coaching. You're just kind of bored. And so that would be one way to know it's time to go. It's time to move on. Number 2, second way, your vision is not being supported. The vision that you have for the program, maybe you're a head coach. Maybe you're an athletic director listening to this. When should I go? Maybe you're a principal listening to this. Maybe you're an assistant coach. I don't know who my whole audience is. But a second way to know it's time to move on is if your vision isn't being supported above you. Maybe you have a vision to take a program in a certain direction, and that vision's going to cost money, or that vision's going to mean time, and that's not being supported by the administration, or it's not being supported by the community you're in. This can happen to either a head coach or an assistant coach, right? So sometimes your vision, it's no longer being supported because the people above you change out for new people, maybe. Okay? And so you get tired of that rotating admin, perhaps. Sometimes it's because you've been preaching the same thing for a long time now, and that message is stale, so it's not supported by those underneath you, your coaching staff or the players. I know I can't remember who, but last week I heard someone who's on the Seahawks talking about how he doesn't listen to Pete Carroll anymore. I mean, he said that on a radio interview. He doesn't listen to Pete Carroll anymore. He said that this summer. And I was kind of blown away that an NFL player would come out with that on air. But you can kind of see how and why he would say that thing, He said, yeah, Pete's message just doesn't resonate with me anymore. I'm tired of Turnover Tuesday or, Make It Perfect Fridays or whatever he labels each day. He just said 9 years in NFL, it's the same old thing every day. So maybe that's happening to you. I don't know. But that's a second reason. Your vision's just not being supported. What you need to ask yourself when your vision is not being supported is why? Why is this vision I have not being supported? Then you need to determine, is that because of you, your leadership? Maybe you're burned out, maybe you're ready to go and the vision's not being supported? Or is that because of your supervisors that your vision is not being supported? It's usually, one or the other. And I talked to a coach at one of the clinics last year. I think it was USA Football Conference I was at. Very high profile coach, multiple state champion. I don't want to use his name here, but he made a big move this year and it shocked everybody. I think he's coming off of a state championship, or at least playing in that state championship game, and he made a decision to leave, and everybody was really, really surprised. And he said, hey, he told me privately, basically, Chris, we got a new principal, and we don't share the same vision. And so here's a guy who does a tremendous job leading a program. I mean, he'd be one of the top 5 guys I would interview for a head football coach position. I'd reach out to him, bring him on in. And I really respect what he's doing, what his career has done on the field and off the field. And he's saying, man, I would die here if I had it up to me. Love the kids, love the community, love my staff. But it all changed with the principal who came in. And he recognized right away the vision I have to run this program. It's not going to be supported like it needs to be supported. So it's time to bow out. And, that's what he did. And he found a great gig. Another school welcomed him with open arms. So that's the second reason. It'd be time to go. Your time is up. Your vision's just not being supported. And then number 3, the third reason it might be time to go and look elsewhere. You aren't growing. Okay, you aren't growing. You've kind of reached your capacity working for that coach or working for that administrator, what have you. And you feel like, I need to make a move so that I can grow as a coach. I need to make a move so that I can be stimulated in this coaching profession. And so if you're not growing, that might be a sign. Usually if you're not growing, you're also going to end up, a little frustrated and bored, I think. And so that's another reason. That's another sign it might be time to go if you're not growing. The head coach I worked for, I mentioned the school Oak Hills a little while ago here in Hesperia. And the head coach I worked for there had a great saying. I really loved it. Coach Kistner, he said, if I'm the smartest, we were talking about hiring, and he hired me to come coach his special teams 2014. And as we were talking about, all the hiring process and that sort of thing, he said, and this isn't just him who says this, it's a popular phrase among football coaches, but he said, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room. And he truly meant that. And I love it, and that's kind of his philosophy, is to get the best guys in the room he can. When I was a head coach, I did the same thing. I've coached DBs for 2 years out of 17 in the game. Can I coach DBs? Yes. Can I teach them some of the fundamentals for them to be a successful DB in our system and play pretty good football? Yes. Do I enjoy coaching DBs? No. And so I want to find the absolute best defensive backs coach in my area that I'm able to find. And so that's one of those things the very good coaches out there do. And not only do they find those coaches, okay, but they're going to want to try to mentor those guys, bring them along, allow them to grow, become a better coach, allow them to grow and become a more whole coach, okay? But I'd say that's a third reason to leave. You're just not growing. I know sometimes I've been in positions where you just don't have a lot of respect for the head coach you're working for. You kind of think he's a little bit of a clown or what have you. So if you're in that boat, you're not going to grow, right? if you don't respect the guy leading you, it's not going to bring you to a place where you can grow under his leadership. I told you earlier, I just started an assistant principal job, and the principal who's leading me, who I report to, tremendous leader. I've got a ton to learn from him in regards to administration. And I really enjoy our meetings, our talks, because I'm learning from him constantly. But if you go work for a guy you're not learning anything from, you're not growing, it's real easy to become like a stagnant pool, where moss starts growing, you start getting frustrated. So if we're not being challenged by anyone else in our room, anyone else in our staff, and you're not growing, it might be time to go. Have you recently felt like you're getting better as a coach? Maybe you have been in that place for some time, surrounded by all the same guys. You stopped growing at some point. You don't feel that need to really get any better because you're just kind of getting by just fine how you are, right? You haven't read anything lately. You haven't really seen anything. Push yourself to learn new techniques or tactics that help you become a better coach. You kind of think, well, I got it all figured out type of deal. If that's the case, it might be time to go. It might be time to move on from your position. So to review, number 1, we talked about being bored. Number 2, your vision's not being supported. Number 3, you're just not growing as a coach. And then number 4, things have changed. Something changed. So I'll tell you briefly about my own story in this regards. I was hired as the athletic director at a school in 2012. And I went into that school very excited, very pumped up. It was a really good process that they went through to find an athletic director. And the school board had told them, you need to hire someone who's going to change our athletic program for the better. This school had won just 3 league championships in 10 years. I mean, that's awful, right? 10 years, they won 1 league championship like every 3.3 years. That was brutal. Long story short, we won 6. We won 6 league championships in my very first year there. That's a whole separate podcast. But what happened was the superintendent brings me in, he hires me. We double the budget, which was awesome. I told him, hey, I'm going to have to get rid of some guys, some coaches I've met with. I met with every head coach one-on-one. I could tell some of them they weren't very good head coaches. So we made some moves, got rid of some. Forcefully, some of them, we had to kind of let go. And then others, we just asked them to move on. And then a couple actually came to that meeting with their keys because they were tired of the school. And I talked them to stay on, and both of them won a league championship that year. And all they needed was just a little more support and vision and money. So that was really, really funny how all of that went. Again, I'm meeting with every head coach, and it wasn't until after those meetings I decided, I needed to change some of them. And like I said, I had to force some out, and then others trying to quit, which was really interesting. But anyhow, so we have a great first year, right? Like I said, they went from 3 league championships in 10 years to winning 6 in my first year. And we changed out, half the coaches or so. We started, just a whole new philosophy on how to run that athletic program. And most importantly, it was supported from the very top down, from the school board onto the superintendent. In fact, the superintendent told me, if you ever get told no, you think something needs to happen with this athletic program, personnel, financially, facilities, if you think something happens and you're told no by, your superior or the people underneath me, basically the principal or the assistant superintendents, if you're told no, you come see me, my door's open to you. So I did that 4 or 5 times in that first year where I was told no, and I knew that we had to go in a certain direction. Won't get into specifics there, but I did. I went in and saw him, went into his office, like I said, 4 or 5 times to let him know, hey, I need your support here. This, that, or the other thing needs to change. And principal, or most of the times actually it was an assistant superintendent, told me, no, we can't do it, or it's always been done this way, or what have you. So anyway, every one of those 4 or 5 times, superintendent supported me and, overruled the people between he and I. So that was great. Like I said, we had a great season. But all of a sudden it changed. My superintendent got fired by the board for something he did away from school. And then now guess who became the superintendent? You're correct. That assistant superintendent, right? So that was a very, very frustrating process for me. And literally the day that superintendent was released from his position, I literally went back to my office. We were all brought into this meeting. They showed us how it was all restructured. Literally went right back to my office and started looking for a new job. Because I knew, all right, this place is going right back to square one. And, I left there in 2014. So, wasn't there long, 1.5 school years basically, and 1 3/4, I guess. But everything changed, okay? So we made these great strides that I knew would be ruined. And sure enough, that's basically what happened. Every coach I brought on that was quality, just here a couple years later, none of them are working there anymore. They got rid of most of them right away. And so, we won 6 league championships in my 1 year there. I doubt they've won 6 in the last 4 years, 5 years since then. I really do. I don't know. I haven't followed them too closely. But I know they haven't won more than, 3 in a year. So everything changed for me there. That's sometimes a sign. It's time to go. So a lot of when that happens is when admin changes, right? Like maybe an administrator who hired you, he's your number one fan on campus up in the admin office. He's no longer there. Life changes. You notice the new leadership, whoever's supervising you, doesn't have your back as much type of thing. It might need to go. Like I mentioned that state championship coach earlier. So things change sometimes. That's kind of the course, the nature of life. Hardly ever do you stay, I know out here in California specifically, I don't know about all the rest of the United States, but hardly ever are you going to find a situation where you've got, the same superintendent, the same principal for 15 or 20 years. That just doesn't really happen. And in some districts and some communities, it doesn't really matter who the principal is, Your sport's going to get support. Enough support needed no matter who your supervisor is in that principal chair. And then in other communities, it's 100% determined. Success is 100% determined on who that person is. But when things change, it might be time to go. The other thing that changes sometimes is family. Your family itself changes. The dynamics of your family change, and that makes you, step away from coaching maybe. I've had that happen in my world, to be very honest with you. When my kids started playing sports, last year, for instance, 2017, coaching at the junior college level, I'm sitting here coaching all these other kids, and my wife's, taking my kids to soccer practice. I'm missing all that, and I'm coming home to an empty house because my whole family's out at, soccer fields, and man, I'd rather be with them. So last year was really difficult for me as a coach, and that was one of those reasons. I first started having kids in 2006. My oldest was born in 2006, and I was a head coach at the time. I had been a head coach for just 3 years. I was a head coach for 8 total years. But when my first son was born, boy, you talk about things changing. That changed my perspective on a whole lot. So maybe it's a family situation, okay? A family situation that has changed and means that, maybe it's time to go. Maybe you want to step down from being a head coach, or maybe a family situation has changed. You need to move towns. I don't know what your specific scenarios are. I know I had a good friend who used to coach for me when I was an athletic director, and he came in one day. He was a very good coach. Came in one day with a look on his face. I'm like, dude, I don't want to hear this news. He's like, yeah, I don't, or you don't. Do you want? I don't either, but do you have some time? Yeah, of course. And so he comes in, he sits down, and sure enough, hey, we're moving, Wife wants to move, go back east, live with her parents in her parents' town, not with her parents. But my wife really wants to get closer to her parents. So, we're going to make that move. We've been thinking on this, praying on this for some time, and here we go, So then I had to go find another coach and all that. But for that coach, the reason he left is just times changed. Things changed in his life scenario. So that's another reason you need to leave sometimes. And then number 5, you're frustrated with your boss. You're frustrated with your boss. That's a good sign. It might be time to leave. Now, you're going to be able to work out a lot of frustrations in life, a lot of frustrations with your boss. You'll be able to work out. But there's some of those, some of those frustrations that come up that you cannot get past. Some of those frustrations that might come up in the workplace, you cannot move past. When you lose faith and trust in your boss, you can get frustrated. Or when she isn't communicating well with you, you get frustrated. There are times you can work through frustration, like I said, and there are times when the relationship gets kind of past that point of no return. I've been in both those boats, where that frustration just gets to a point where, I just don't know if we can have this kind of working relationship. I mentioned earlier the school I left. Once, this assistant superintendent became the superintendent. That person was pretty frustrated and upset that I had gone behind their back to the superintendent to make things happen. I was following what the board wanted. I was following what that superintendent wanted. Make our athletic program great. The proof was in the pudding. I mean, we did that. But when I was told no on some things, I did. I went above that guy or that gal. And, once things changed, they became the superintendent. I knew right away, all right, there's been enough frustration here. I don't see this being a very good working relationship. And so, I kind of brought that up to my immediate supervisor. And that person said, yeah, I don't know how this is going to go for you now, Chris. So, but it's all good, man. It spurred me on to bigger and better things. I'm very glad I made that choice. But there are times I could also tell you that you do need to work through some of that frustration, There was a school I worked at before. The superintendent had 2 sons who played football for me. Okay? And she came into my office one Sunday in my classroom. I was watching film, breaking down football, a football game. And I see this lady walks in, and I'm like, well, this is really weird to see you here. It's kind of my first remark, oh, hey, weird seeing you here on a Sunday afternoon. I was getting ready before my coaching staff meeting, all by myself. And she comes into the office, and she said she needed to chat. So I turned off the projector. She needed to chat about the football program. First time she'd ever done this. I could tell she was frustrated with something. And then I heard her explain to me some things she didn't like that were going on in our football program. And I sat there listening to all this. She went off on a little diatribe for maybe 15 minutes. And I sat there just going, man, this is so out of place for a superintendent. She's not here as a superintendent. She's here as a mom. And I didn't feel good about it. And I even said that to her maybe 5 minutes into the conversation. Like, I don't feel real comfortable right now. I think we should probably get the athletic director involved in here. And she told me no, she wasn't going to be doing that. And so I sat there and took the tongue lashing from her. And a lot of it had to do with two things, and you can guess what those two things are. Playing time, and then how the boys were being spoke to by an assistant coach of mine were kind of the two things. So long story short, she went on to explain she wasn't happy with the coaching staff, how we're holding kids accountable. She told me there was too much yelling going on. I totally disagreed with her, reminded her that the same staff, we'd all been together the last 4 years. We didn't change our coaching habits over that time. And this is the first time she'd ever brought this to my attention. First time anybody at my school brought this to my attention, that there was too much yelling. It had never been brought up. And I had a very good relationship with the athletic director and the principal, who also had 2 kids who played for me. So I'll never forget the quote. She says, "There's something wrong in the mix. We're going to have to reevaluate things at the end of the season." And so I read right through that, right? I mean, you kind of have to. You're on the chopping block, pal. That's what she came through saying. So the handwriting was kind of on the wall for me there. Although, they never fired me there. But I thought that was a real threat to me, That 15-minute conversation and her last statement made it pretty clear to me she no longer had confidence in my relationship, right? Although I'd led each of my teams, all 3 seasons, led those teams to the playoffs, including a semifinal. And 2 years before I took over, we went to the semifinals. I was a varsity offensive line coach and special teams coordinator. So we went to the semis twice in 2 years, and they had only been 2 other times in 40 years. So it's not like we were running a shoddy program. We were having a pretty good time. So for her to come in the office was totally out of place. Like I said, she was coming as a mom, not as a superintendent. And that was very frustrating to me. So I went and discussed this conversation with the athletic director that Monday, the very next day. He was not on the same page as the superintendent. He gave me a vote of confidence. He actually brought the principal into the conversation, who gave me a vote of confidence. They kind of apologized for that even happening. He told me to stay focused on this was about after game 4, I think. He told me to stay focused on the rest of the season. But I told him that very day, I told him I might be on my way out. I really didn't like how that lady spoke to me. I don't like how she took advantage of her position. Now, this was at a private school. I don't like how she took advantage of her position and came in to talk to me as a mom. That really frustrated me. I knew the superintendent lost confidence in the football program. I told my AD and my principal, and she was being persuaded to make a change by maybe a small group of parents, a very small minority, or I don't know. But sure enough, a few weeks after that season, I gave them my resignation. I was at that school for 5 years, and I told them, I wanted to pursue an athletic director job, and, I eventually got a very, very good one. I left that school. Nobody at the time really knew it was on bad terms because of the way, and I don't think it was on bad terms per se, except for with one person, My principal, my AD were very supportive. 95% of the parents in the program were very supportive, which is a lot these days, right? And the kids were very supportive. But anyhow, I went on and got a tremendous job, a huge raise, moved to a great area, and so I landed very quickly on my feet in a great role as a head coach at another school. And that went really well. But those are 5 reasons I think that it might be time for you to move on. Again, I get this question a lot. Get this question a lot from coaches. Get this question a lot from both head coaches and assistant coaches. every now and then I'll get it from an athletic director, calling or texting or what have you, just to kind of chew the fat a little bit about their situation. So maybe I covered one of your situations. Outside of those 5, I don't know that I really missed any large pressing issues. I think that those 5 are the ones. You're maybe just frustrated with your boss. There's been a breakdown in that relationship. Maybe things have changed. Number 2, we talked about you're just not growing. We talked about your vision not being supported. And we talked about maybe you being bored. I hope that you've learned something here and maybe taken this something to heart about when it's time to leave, when it's time to make that decision. If there's anything I can help you with in this regard, please don't hesitate to email. My email is Chris, CHRIS, the @ symbol, 8 laces, EIGHTLACES.org. That's Chris at 8laces.org. Hey, send me a DM on Twitter about it. My DMs are open. On Twitter, you can find me at Coach Fore, And then also, I want you to check out my podcast home is at 8 laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast. You can see all my podcasts. We've got almost 20 of them now. Almost 20 podcasts are done, and you can find them there at my podcast home. The last thing to say briefly here, footballcoachingpodcast.com. If you have not seen the lineup of speakers we have at footballcoachingpodcast.com, you're going to want to check out that website again, footballcoachingpodcast.com. Go, please check that out. You will see my friend Joe Daniel, who kind of came together, a bunch of us came together in Las Vegas last spring and said, man, let's kind of join forces here. I didn't have a podcast at the time, but I was thinking of starting one. And so he kind of got us all together and said, man, let's give all us coaches, one place to kind of support each other and have this football coaching podcast network. So again, check that out if you haven't already, footballcoachingpodcast.com. Folks, again, thank you for listening. I truly appreciate your listening ears. I hope this podcast has helped you. I love helping coaches through these scenarios in life. Outside of, some few select, very close friends, I've never really been able to rely on anybody to kind of talk to about these different moves. And some of these moves, making changes, they can be pretty dramatic for you and your family. I get that. I've been there. I've done that. And so I encourage you to find some people you can talk to about making a move. Usually right in your own community is a good place. But obviously you can't do that sometimes depending on who you are. So again, if you need to reach out to somebody, I'd love to help, talk you through some things. And again, thank you for listening to the Coach's Locker Podcast with Chris Fore.